Welcome to the Yes to Entrepreneurship podcast. So real quick, before I jump into the conversation with this week's guest, I just want to let you know what this show's about. Really, this show is just about all the conversations we, entrepreneurs, those of us who are the why notters, have around entrepreneurship. It's the conversation that you don't typically hear because you just see those fun posts on Instagram and Facebook where we're hanging out on yachts or we're making a ton of money and driving these fancy cars, when reality is that's not real life. Real life is trying to figure out how you're going to pay bills, trying to figure out if you're going to make rent this month, trying to figure out if that new client really is going to help move you forward or if they're really going to bring you down. Really, anything goes in these conversations. And you, the listener, gets to eavesdrop in on these conversations that I'm having with fellow entrepreneurs. So grab your cup of coffee, grab your water, grab your tea, whatever it is that you enjoy, and a pen and paper because you're about to take some notes. Also, be sure to share this out. Oh, here comes my guest. Talk to you soon. Quick shout out to our sponsor, StupidEasy.com. StupidEasy.com is a new online course platform where you can easily upload and sell your online courses without having to be tech savvy and without them taking a cut of your sales. Discover more at StupidEasy.com, and we'll have a link in the show notes for you. So Tracy, I know it's been a while and we talked briefly, it's probably been a few months now, maybe a little longer, but we had talked on the phone about nonprofit work, and I know that that's your specialty. So just fill me in a little bit on what you actually do and how you got into it, because that's what I'm always curious about when I meet other entrepreneurs is what are they actually doing and how did they get started with it?
Well, I kind of fell into becoming a nonprofit consultant. It wasn't something that I set out to do. It just happened that my profession of what I went to college for was education. So I'm an English Language Educator. And because I was so good at writing naturally, not just because I was a language arts educator, people would always come to me to ask me to help them write this or edit this, that type of stuff. Doing so, people started coming to me and asking, can you help me write a grant? And I was like, well, I don't know anything about grants, but it shouldn't be that hard because it's writing nonetheless, right? So I started doing research and finding out, what grants are, what components you would need to be in a grant for it to be successful and that type of stuff. And with that, I started writing grants for people just for fun, not for profit, not for looking at it as an extra source of income. I was satisfied with my teaching position and I made pretty good money, and I had a side hustle where I did tutoring on after school or on the weekends. So I made really good money between both jobs. Like I said, I started writing the grants for friends of mine, and the grants started getting approved. And I was like, wow, really? That my first grant, the very first grant I wrote was for like $25,000. It was for an adult education program, and it was approved. And I was like, wow, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? So I wrote that grant for her, and then she came back and she asked me to help her write other grants. And then, people asked her who was writing your grants. She told them, and then I started writing grants for other people. Like I said, I never charged for it. I just did it just because,
Yeah.
And fast forward maybe 10 years down the line, I had a baby that passed away, and I wanted to start a nonprofit organization to help women through the grieving process of losing a child. And I started doing research on that too. I was still teaching at the time, and I got all the paperwork together, filled it out, went through the whole process, doing my strategic plan, my business plan, everything necessary to set up the nonprofit. But in the end, I chose not to set it up because the grief I was feeling, I wasn't able to overcome at that time. And I didn't feel that I could be effective in helping another woman through the grieving process if I couldn't even deal with my own grief.
Sure.
So I said, okay, I'll table that until another time. when I am more equipped mentally, physically, and emotionally to deal with it. But people knew, because I was talking about it, that I was going to start this nonprofit organization. And just like with the grants, they started asking me, how are you going to set this up? And then 2 years after that, I had my daughter, another daughter, and she was a premature baby as well. Ended up having to go to Miami Children's Hospital for 3 months with her, because she was in the hospital for 3 months. And then just talking to people about what I do, what I'm able to do. I met people who were starting nonprofit organizations and needed help. And again, just helping them out of the goodness of my heart, not looking at it as a source of income, because I had a full-time job that I liked at the time. And that's how that started. So I just started, helping people to structure their nonprofit organizations, helping them to source out grants and revenue streams. And that's basically what I do now. So I help nonprofit organizations build and grow profitable and sustainable infrastructures for success. So I do a lot of, and through education as well. I'm very big on the education component because that is my background. So I find that a lot of people start nonprofit organizations and they're not clear on what their roles are as founders, and how to go about making a nonprofit organization sustainable and profitable. And you would hear a lot of people talk about nonprofits not focusing on the financial part of the nonprofit. They'll talk about not focusing on the money. You're supposed to be more focused on the mission. Well, my philosophy is you cannot accomplish the mission without the money. They go hand in hand. So if you're not focused on finances and you have no money to work with, you cannot help the community.
Yeah, that's like with anything, right? I mean, you have to have
exactly
in hand.
Exactly. So I find a lot of nonprofit organizations that, especially smaller nonprofits, they are financially in a deficit. They have no surplus funds. They don't even have the funds to hire a consultant. They don't know what a consultant does. Most of them are not even in compliance. So that's one thing I'm very big on, is compliance, because you can get your tax exempt status taken away from you if you're not in compliance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a lot of nonprofit organizations, they feel that, especially when they're starting out, because I'm kind of saying that they have passion, they have purpose for the mission that they want to accomplish, but they did not take the time, and it takes time. You know this, to become an expert in an area, it takes a certain amount of time for you to build up the knowledge base to consider yourself an expert, time and experience. So you decide today that you want to start a nonprofit organization because you see a need in your community that you'd like to fill, but you don't know all of the inner workings of a nonprofit organization and how it should be structured, what you need. So you just go ahead. The paperwork it's arduous, but it can be filled out by someone without the use of a consultant.
Yeah.
But there are steps, processes that you must go through to set up any business correctly. And when you miss steps along the way, it shows on the end. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, yeah, it shows that the end product that you missed some steps along the way. And what I try to tell people is that a nonprofit is a business. It's a business like any other business. It needs financial wealth in order to survive. It has processes, there's steps that you need to take to get to your end goal. And when you miss some of those steps, you end up having to pay more money at the end to fix what you should have put in place at the very beginning.
Right. Yeah. And that's so true that, it is a business, and just like with any business, you got to get your finances and your legal game correct and on point at the beginning.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of money, and it's expensive, but you can't just be going over, no offense to LegalZoom. I've never tried them, but I've heard so many horror stories, especially from lawyers who were not even trying to get my business. They're just trying to educate me about, don't go set up an LLC through LegalZoom because of X, Y, and Z. There's always something that most of their jobs is fixing what they messed up with. So it's like, don't go, to the cheapest option, especially when it comes to building the foundation of a business, which is the legal and the financial aspects of it.
Exactly. The cheapest way is not always the best way. It's just that cheap.
It's so true. And so what challenges have you faced in going this route with your business? I mean, it sounds like it was a perfect fit for you.
There's so many challenges, Ed. Yeah, there's so many challenges, honestly. And I mean, if we're going to be talking transparency,
yes,
there are times when I do wonder. I love what I do. I love helping people set up, like I said, structured nonprofit organizations that will in turn help the community. Because we know that we have so many communities that are not functioning correctly.
Yep.
Communities that need the assistance that these nonprofits can afford them. But changing the mentality of the founders of the nonprofits and the leaders, the founders and the board of directors, is the biggest hurdle that you have to overcome. And there are days when I sit here and I shake my head and I'm like, oh my goodness, I could be doing something else. I could be making more money somewhere else. But then I have to remember, it's not all about the money. It's about the satisfaction that I feel when I help someone set up their nonprofit the right way, and they're able to go out there and accomplish their mission and realize their vision,
Yeah.
But the education component, I am so strong right now on the education component. And I know that you two are doing something similar where you're setting up a whole thing with your website where you're going to have, it's like an education platform.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to do the same thing on my website for nonprofit education, because a lot of nonprofits also don't realize that just like any other business, you need to have yearly professional development.
Yes. And that's,
so
yeah.
It's imperative to your success. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. Things change year after year. I have to have professional development in my area of expertise to make sure that I'm up on the trends, that I know what's going on, and that what I'm doing is of sound practice. It's best practices. So I'm trying to get nonprofit organization leaders to realize that they themselves need yearly professional development. So does their staff and their volunteers.
Yeah.
A lot of nonprofits do not put enough stock in their volunteers, and volunteers are like, a lot of people like to say volunteers are free, but really and truly it's not free, because you should have someone on staff to train your volunteers.
Yeah.
They need training, and they need professional development as well. So you are spending money on volunteers, just not directly, but you do need to spend money in that area. So right now I am coming up with a lot of on-demand courses that they can buy a membership to.
Nice.
It's called a nonprofit university. They'll be able to go in, just buy a yearly membership, and I'll be sending 24 different on-demand classes that they'll be able to take so that they can stay abreast and grow themselves and their organization.
I love that, because that's something that I am really, I'm really big on as well, is the self-development and the educational part. And I tell people, especially when starting out or when they're thinking about starting out, because I have a few friends that are taking, every little bit that I give them when we meet up. And I tell them, you have to understand that there is this whole personal development component that isn't talked about, and that people don't necessarily invest enough time in, if any, especially once they're established. And it's so important that you do that, because at times it does feel like it's busy work and you're like, oh, I just want to launch this already, or I just want to do this already. But when you pause,
I know exactly what you mean, because that's how I've felt for the last couple of days.
It's like but once you push past that and you understand that you're doing something that not everyone is doing, then you realize that you are one step ahead of the game. It may not seem like it, but you are, and you'll come out on top, because now you know your stuff. where everyone else later, like you said,
Exactly.
it's expensive later because they're going and they're backpedaling, and then it's a little too late.
Yes.
And that's the hard part.
I completely agree.
That people don't realize is that educational piece. And yeah, for you to be educating them, it's so important in any business, but especially in this part, because like you said, these are communities. These are people that are trying to make a huge impact. And if their foundation isn't solid and they're not constantly being educated, well, then how are they going to push that out to others? You know, you have to invest in your people, and you have to put time and money and energy into starting at the beginning so that it can flow and trickle down to the rest.
Exactly.
That's so interesting how it all works. And so what do people the people that you work with, when you tell them that a nonprofit's a business, do they ever like question you on that, or do they ever kind of like do a side eye, or is like, huh, what are you talking about?
Definitely. Oh yeah. Even when I put posts on Facebook, I get, like comments sometimes that are like, what are you saying? It's a nonprofit organization. So I have a new motto, and it is, don't let the non and nonprofit fool you. It's still a business.
I like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I had to come up with, because I realized that a lot of people are letting that NON fool them into believing that this organization should not make money. And so that's a whole nother educational component. So when people do call about starting a nonprofit, I do go into, I said, let's start off with this. You're starting a business, but your business is mission focused. And that's how I started it all. So then they'll ask me, what are you saying? And then I'll go into my spiel about, a nonprofit being a business, and it needs to be run like a business. The only difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit business, well, not the only, but one of the main components between a nonprofit organization and a for-profit organization is that it's a public entity. It's not owned by you. You are starting this nonprofit, so therefore you are the founder of the organization, but the board of directors is the decision-making body of a nonprofit organization. And they're like, so, a lot of people they're starting a nonprofit, but they don't know these basic things. So they're like, what are you trying to say? I'm like, you can't run around here telling people that you are the owner of a nonprofit organization, because that is not true. You don't own it. You're just the founder. It's not owned by anyone.
Right.
And I said, if you are a control freak, because I'm a little bit of a control freak.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I said, a nonprofit is not. Yeah. I said, a nonprofit organization is not what you want to start. You need to stay in the realm of LLC. Where you can stay in control, you have a decision, you make the decisions to the day-to-day functioning of your organization. But once you go ahead and you put that 1023 in to the IRS and it's approved and you get tax exemption, your organization now becomes a public entity that is run by a board of directors. And that is another component that I'm very big on, is the board of directors and choosing your board members carefully.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people also don't know that your board of directors can terminate you from the nonprofit that you started.
Isn't that crazy? It's like, it's so interesting. And it's like, just like with any business, if you're gonna partner with someone,
exactly,
you need to watch out who you partner with, and you need to check out your legal game, because you need to have that all straightened out, because you don't want to start your company, partner with someone, and then later find out that you just got dismissed from your company. Wow.
I mean, in the realm of being a nonprofit, there's nothing you can do about that.
That's
because of how you have to set up your bylaws. If the board feels that you're no longer aligned with the mission of the organization, they can vote you out. And how a lot of times how that happens is that if you start a nonprofit, your board has to have a minimum of 3 people. I usually tell people 5. You always want to keep it an odd number for the, tiebreaker.
Yeah.
but a lot of founders end up becoming executive directors of their nonprofit organization, and you shouldn't be on the board. You can be, but you really shouldn't be, because the board makes financial decisions, and if you're the executive director of your nonprofit, you're drawing a salary, and it is a conflict of interest for you to sit on a board where they're going to be determining your salary. So because a lot of them are not because a lot of them are not on the board of directors, because a lot of them are not on the board of directors, they stop going to meetings. They stop going to meetings. So there are decisions being made within the board that they're not privy to, because they're not taking the time then to go back and read the minutes and find out what decisions are being made. So then a conflict arises. Even though you're not making a decision, you don't have voting power with the board. You should still attend all board meetings and give your input. You can give your input. You just can't vote yay or nay at the very end. But that's one of the things that causes a lot of nonprofit executive directors who are founders to be terminated from the board, from their organization, or the organization that they helped start. To be more correct.
Yeah. Do you are you finding these people like who are starting from square one, or are you having to deal with a lot of people that have had this foundation already started, this nonprofit already started, and now you kind of have to like just jump in and give them this knowledge and kind of help them back up a little bit?
Okay, so that is a really good question. So when I started out, deciding to go out on my own, I stopped subcontracting and decided to go out on my own. I really wanted to help people start nonprofit organizations. So a lot of the clients I was getting were people who wanted to start up, and but they didn't want to pay. They thought I was going to help them for free. Because again, the none in front of profit made them think that, oh yes, I'm going to start this organization and everybody's just going to want to give me everything for free. Furthest thing from the truth, I'm a business and I need to make money as well. And then I started getting a lot of people who had nonprofit organizations. They already had their tax exempt status, but they were not functioning as a nonprofit. They got the tax exempt status and then they did not know what to do.
Yep.
So they didn't have an office where people can come in and get services. They had no programs or services set up. They just had that piece of paper from the IRS that says, okay, here you go, you're a formation. You're a formed, tax exempt 501c nonprofit.
Wow.
They had never reported their yearly reporting. Never. They didn't even know what a Form 990 was. They had no clue. But again, the same thing. They don't have any money to pay me for my services.
Right.
So I sat down and I really thought about it, because at the end of the day, in order for me to stay in business as well, I have to start making money.
Right.
I sat down and I really thought about it, and I was like, okay, what can I do to still make money and still help these organizations out? And with my coach, we were talking, just having a conversation one day, and she said, some of these nonprofit organizations need emergency room service. And that just stuck with me. Like, it stuck with me for a long time. And one night I couldn't sleep, and then I came up with this concept. It's called a nonprofit ER.
Oh, I like that.
Yes. I was like, they do need emergency services. They do need help. They need all of the services that somebody would go into the ER for and come out on the other end fine.
Yeah.
So I created this program called the Nonprofit ER, which is going to be an on-demand self-assessment, analysis, and prescription, cure, booster shots, everything that you need to get your nonprofit life together.
I love it. That's the stupid easy route. I love that.
So I've been working diligently on it. It should be up and ready for purchase June 1st or at least June 15th. So that's what I'm doing. So if you were to ever go to my website, you would see it. It's written up like you're actually going to the doctor and you have this problem. You don't know what it is. So you need to be triaged. So in the triaging phase, you find out, you try to figure out what's going on. Where's the leak that needs to be cauterized? So you're bleeding out, but you need to find that vein that needs to be cauterized in order to move to the next step, Yeah. So they go through that, and then they go through diagnosing. Okay, so now you've done the triaging. What is your diagnosis? Then you have to write a prescription to solve that, to kill that virus. So you have your prescriptions that you're writing, which is the prescription phase, is that planning phase. Coming up with a strong strategic plan and steps to achieving it, and then you have your cure, which is the implementation of the strategic plans that you came up with. And then you have boosters. So boosters or vaccinations, yearly vaccinations. They're things that you need to do on a consistent basis in order to keep up your health, or else you're going to go into decline again.
Yes.
So
oh my goodness. I am like jumping for joy for you right now. That is so smart. And that's what I love, is when you can plan it out, when you have that time to think and you do all your research, you start creating all these, you're doing the work and you're educating yourself, but when you let yourself think a little bit, then that's when it hits you, and you've been able to not only hit your mark, but also make it so, I'm going to use my term, stupid easy.
Easy, yes.
Because they can relate to that. It's like, for me, when I have to break down tech for people, I'm not going to tell you, you need, or I'm not going to tell you, well, 2.4 gigahertz does XYZ versus the 2.8. Nobody cares about that. They just want to know
exactly
which one is best for what I need it for. Here's what I need.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So you're breaking it down and you're making it so easy for them to understand, so that they don't even have to get caught up in the whole, it's a business, or I'm confused with XYZ. It's like, no, here's the process. Mm-hmm. Literally, you've been here, done that, and if not, you're going to see, here's the route. 1, 2, 3, 4, keep going,
Exactly.
Oh, that is brilliant.
And that's what I see, when I planned it out in my mind, because when I taught all different levels. So I taught special education students, integration, inclusion, and I taught regular ed students, and I taught honor students. So in one day, I'm teaching 3 completely different levels of students. And unless I want to sit down and spend my entire nights and weekends planning out 3 different lesson plans, I had to figure out a way to write one lesson plan and have one test that would be easily manipulated to 3 different levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is something I've gotten really, really good at, is finding a way to make things easy, like you said, stupid easy for people to understand. So I can take the higher functioning skills and break it down into a way that is easily digestible.
And that's what makes you stand out, because you found that one thing. It only needs one thing to make you stand out from the crowd and to be different. And that, you have more than one thing, obviously, but you have that one thing that's so easy for them to quickly catch on and be like, oh, well, she's already speaking my language, so I'm going to listen in and see what she actually really knows now, because I'm hooked at the beginning, which is perfect. And of course, in my mind, I already have the whole ER situation in my head. I can picture every stop. I'm like, this is who?
Right, and that's how I kind of, when I went through it, that's what I was doing. I said, I've spent enough time going to the emergency room. Okay, how did it, and I started off as a nursing student, so I'm very familiar with the medical field, because I started off as pre-med when I went to college, and then ended up going into nursing school. And so I'm like, okay, I'm already, familiar with the process. I know how it works. How can I take that same process and apply it? So it was fun. It was really fun coming up with the different steps and the descriptions and making it really fun. And like you said, easy for people to understand.
Yeah, because I'm like, that's the beauty of coming up with something like that, because it's already out there and now you can just make it relatable to your content, and it makes it almost easier to put out your content, because not only because it's easy to understand, but because you already know where you need to input those steps. You know, if you have an outline already, well, now you know where to connect the dots, because you know, if you start here at the emergency room, you talk to the nurse, and then you go here, and then you go there. It's perfect. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and versus, and like I said, one of the main reasons for coming up with these two solutions was I do understand, because I had the same boat where, you know, I've wanted to do something, and at that particular point in time, I could not afford it. So then you have to save towards it. So if I had to go in and look at a failing nonprofit organization, or what I want to call an ailing nonprofit organization,
Right.
I would have to go in, and it would take me some time to do it, and I will definitely be charging you. So that will probably be like $5,000 for me to go through every step of the process with you, because that's me now spending my time mapping it out, figuring out what's going on, figuring out how to fix it for you. In this way, you're able to do that for yourself. And I think when you do that, like that is self-learning, instead of me coming in and doing it for you, if you have to do it for yourself, it sticks with you longer.
Oh, big time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You're empowering the individual who wants to actually do it, but just doesn't have the right tools or resources until now to be able to do it. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the same.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, it's for literally a fraction of the cost, because right now at the introductory rate, it's like $397. I'll probably carry it up to like $497 eventually, because it's a lot of material.
Yeah.
The booklet, the workbook for this class is like currently over 200 pages.
Wow.
So, you know, and then I give them 15 minutes of consultation after each module. So I'm still in there with them, you know, but just not in there with them, you know? So yeah, I'm excited about that. That is, I think, is the one thing that I have created thus far that makes me smile every time I think about it, talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
I just really like that. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what it's all about, is really pushing through those hard times, because let's face it, we all have those down moments, whether they're moments, hours, days, weeks, months, but we all have those down roller coaster ride where, you know, you're up and you're down, but when you find that thing that makes you happy, which it can take a long time.
Yes, it can. It can. It really can.
Yeah, it's like I tell people all the time, like with Yes to Entrepreneurship, I mean, that's just still so recent. And I think that came about in early April here of 2017. Now, what's crazy is that has been in the works in terms of all the knowledge and the behind the scenes stuff, but the actual name that I needed to click and to make it like everything underneath it didn't come until April. And that was it. Yes to Entrepreneurship. It was like the fourth one on my list that I came up with, and it just so happened to be free and it worked. And I was like, how is this not taken? Like,
that's awesome, right? I know. That's so weird that was not taken. You know why? It was meant for you.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, and since then I've been on fire, and you know, it really ties everything together. So same with like the nonprofit ER, it's part of the business that you're doing all these other things, which is fine, but that's the part of the business where you're like, this clicks, like this works for me, and this is going to work for everyone who sees it.
Right. Yep.
That's
yep, I agree.
Now, when you were coming up with that, did you face the crazy shiny object syndrome, trying to come up with all these other ideas in your head, and you're trying to figure out which ones to follow and which ones are distractions versus which ones are actually going to help you move forward?
I used to a little bit suffer from shiny object syndrome, but I don't have the what's the word I'm looking for right now?
You sound pretty focused. I mean,
yeah, I don't have that issue anymore. I've never really been a shiny object syndrome type of person to begin with. I one of the biggest areas that I focus on outside of education within my business is strategic planning.
Oh, okay.
So I am very methodical in the things that I do.
Yeah.
So that's just, I said earlier, I'm a control freak. So I'm very methodical about the things that I do. So strategic planning comes naturally to me, and program development too, along with the nonprofit, those things, because I don't even see them as separate entities. I see them as the same. So once I set my mind on doing something, I like to follow it through to the end. So I don't really have that issue anymore where I'm like jumping around. I may have multiple passions, passions, but I can focus in and get one thing done and then move on to the other thing.
Am
I making sense?
Yeah, that is key. And I can tell you, I do suffer from the shiny object syndrome. I'm very focused when I'm on something, but I am guilty of it. And I will say that probably the last 6 months, maybe a little longer, I have really found the key is to just narrow your focus, like get very specific and not to multitask. Even though you can do it, you shouldn't do it. And that you really do need to block out specific time to work on a specific task and a specific project, because otherwise you
can be all over the place.
Yeah.
So something that I can tell you, like one of the things that you said on your social media that really resonated with me is not getting on Facebook until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I've been telling people that for a long time. I said, social media is a distraction, because I can get on social media to say that I'm going to post or that I'm just going to see what's going on, and I'm only going to spend 5 minutes. And the next thing I know, an hour has passed and I'm still here. Like, I'm just like, wait a minute. Oh my God, I still had so much to do, and I'm still over here looking at other people's stuff. Are you kidding me? So, seriously. So one of the things that I do, and I've been doing this for years, like since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Every night before I go to sleep, I make a to-do list for the next day. So nice. I've gotten even worse, like this year, especially since I'm trying to push out and really focus on my business and make some serious money in my business this year. I've been planning out quarterly. I try planning out for the entire year. Like I have a sketch of what I want to accomplish by the end of the year, because I think that's pivotal. You need to do that. But then I'm doing quarterly plannings. So I'll plan out, so first quarter, what I want to accomplish. Then how am I going to break this accomplishment down into months? And then how am I going to break it down into weeks? Yeah. So I have my weekly, what I need to accomplish the weekly. So I look at that, and then on Sundays, I'll make my daily plan for that week. But then every night, I still need to go and update it, because something will happen throughout the day. Like, oh, okay, I got to do this tomorrow. Something, that wasn't necessarily on the list. So I find for myself that if I don't work off a list, I feel at the end of the day like I have not accomplished anything, because I have nothing visually to go back and look at and ticked off that I have actually done. So even though I'm working throughout the day, I'm just like, at the end of the day, I would still ask myself, well, what did I do today?
Right.
How did I accomplish my goals? And staying off social media is something that helps me tremendously. So that night before I go to sleep, I will post my first post for the next day. And usually I don't get on social media per se. I may just, because I'm neurotic about having tags on my phone. Oh, yeah. So that little red button that pops up annoys me. I'll go in and clear it out. Oh, okay. People look at me like, what? I'm like, no, I can't take it. Like, it will drive me insane having that red tag on my phone. So I would go in and clear it, and just go right back to doing what I'm doing. So I really don't get on social media until like 12 o'clock. And that's usually my lunch break, because I try my best, for the most part, to operate my at-home business like I was working a regular job. So I start working at 7:30ish in the morning, and I stop working at 5:30, sometimes 6, sometimes later. But I mean, at least I try to make sure that those hours are set aside for working on tasks that will build revenue in my business. And I take a lunch break. I take my 2 15-minute breaks, just like I was working a regular job.
Yeah. That's important, and I tell people that too. I schedule out my day, and I schedule in my breaks, and I schedule in my lunch and my time for the gym and my walks with the dog. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to happen at that time.
Exactly.
At least I have it there as a good reminder. And just like you, I have to have the paper part to check things off, and have my list and be able to do that. And the big part for me, as you mentioned, was the social media distraction. And it's so true. And for me, I felt like I was doing my part and being on social media for hours on end because I was like, well, I just started my business and I'm giving value and I'm engaging with everyone. And,
right. But let me ask you a question now.
Yeah.
Do you find, well, you're in a different field than I am in. So do you find that you're finding a lot of your clients on social media?
Well, that's funny you asked, because I was going to ask you that same question. But yes, for me, a lot of my clientele does come from social media, Facebook specifically. Because I am very involved in a few different groups on there, which, if we were talking a couple years ago, Facebook was just a cool thing to post, where I was at the lake or something. But now it's all about business. And maybe I'll post a personal stuff every once in a while, but it's mostly business. And the Facebook groups is just this whole other world that has changed my perspective. And for me, a lot of my clients, and believe it or not, I actually have I'm on the West Coast, I'm in California, and I have a lot of East Coasters who are my clients because I found them through Facebook groups. And it's very cool. But at the same time, that's where I was like, my focus was, well, I'm in here, I'm doing the work, I'm not getting paid, but I'm doing the work to get noticed, to then get paid eventually later down the line, which is true. But there is also that time and place where you have to say, okay, I need to limit my time. I need to audit the time and figure out how much I should be spending and where I should be spending it so that I can keep other things moving. Because I was finding that I was so exhausted by being on social media, checking all the status updates, helping all of these people, which I love to do, but your mind is shifting so many different directions. It takes a while for it to catch up. And once it does, then you're like, well, my whole day went by and I did a lot of work, but I don't know what it was.
I didn't do anything.
Right. I don't know where my business is at right now. So because mine is,
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and mine is so heavily focused on that aspect. I am curious for you, because you do have a lot of the referral part and being well connected like that in that area. Do you find that social media is even that big of a deal for you, or is it just
no?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I first decided, I really need to push my business forward. I need brand awareness, because at first I was calling my company Tracy V Allen Consulting, and that's before I started my LLC. And once I decided to go ahead and form my LLC, I didn't want to use my name anymore. So instead I used my initials. So my company is called TVA Consulting LLC. Then I decided, I need more brand awareness. I do have a business page on Facebook.
Okay.
And I cross post from my business page to my profile page, my regular profile page. That I needed to start doing a lot more posting. And I could say, making videos and I don't like it. I'm going to be really honest. I don't like doing videos. I really, really don't like it. I know that we're moving to a society where video is king as content, but I don't like Facebook Live. I do it every now and again, but I really don't. I don't like going live.
Is it because you're
video.
live, or is it because you're live, or is it just you don't like being on video? Because I know for me, when I first started, I just didn't like being on video.
I don't like being on video. Like, I can have this conversation with you and we can talk for hours and hours and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not about public speaking. It's just about something about video. I like conversation. I like to be able to talk back and forth with people that I'm talking to. And I can't do that in video. Yeah. You know, I have no personal engagement to gear what's going on with the person receiving the information. If I'm doing a live public speaking, I can see the audience reaction and I can readjust at that time to make myself more appealing to them, right. You know? And then for me, I know that I'm quite monotone. Like, I can speak in one tone voice. I could be the most excited person in the world and I would still sound like I'm dead, you know? And it's something I know I have to work on, but I don't know how hard I want to work on it. I'm 44 years old and I've been this way all my life. Right. But when I'm in person, or like if I'm having an interaction with someone else I want to interact with, I can be very animated, because that's one of the things my students always tell me. Oh my God, Miss Allen, you get up there and you're like, your hands are flailing and you're just like, you know, you're talking in different voices. I'm very engaging, but something about video, I don't know what it is, and I just don't like it.
I totally get it. Like, it takes a while to get used to it. And I mean, to be honest, I haven't been doing it quite a bit lately, but I am more myself, if that makes sense, on video now than I was a few months back, 6 months
Okay,
ago.
I get it. Because you get accustomed to it.
Yeah.
So I did it for a while and I was doing it every day and everything was going great. And then I got sick and then I haven't been able to do it now for about a month. And I'm like, oh, I still need to get up there just for brand awareness, if nothing else. Because for me, you asked me this question, I didn't answer it. Yeah. But for me, I don't think my target audience is on Facebook.
Right. And see, that's the part where I tell people to, and I actually have to be reminded of this too, because I know I'm very techie and I live in this tech bubble that, you know, even when I was working at the Apple store, it was like that I was surrounded by the highest tech, right? And it's like, once you leave those four walls, though, you're in the rest of the world, and not everyone's up to par with the latest iPhone or the coolest computer or even a functioning phone, you know? And so I have to constantly remind myself that I'm in this social media world and I promote and I talk and I engage in all of this, which is great, but not everyone is there. And my target market might be there, but a lot of them aren't there because they don't know how to get there yet. They're waiting for me to help them get there. So, you know, it's one of those things where I have to constantly remind myself and tell others that social media is great and it's a great avenue to push your content out to, but you have to realize that you also have to do other work, as in working with your local areas. Like, I mean, to be honest, I haven't even gone to my local Chamber of Commerce yet. I've been to other creative spaces.
Neither have I.
Yeah. You know, I've been to these other events and workshops. Yeah. But I haven't been to like these key areas. Obviously, I don't need it that bad because I'm making do, but it's still nice to go there and connect and remind yourself that there's a whole lot of conversation and work to be done offline just as much as there is online.
Exactly. So right now, my efforts are focused more offline. And like I said, trying to build these platforms, put these platforms together. I'm not techie in any way, so that I'm going to have to outsource to someone, because I can do all of the videotaping that needs to be done for each module, put all the PDFs together. But when it comes to actually putting this stuff together on the computer, no, that's not me. I've crashed my website 4 times just trying to update stuff.
Right.
So.
Right. And
that techie part is not for me. Like anything in Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office, I've got it down packed. But something about websites and all the coding and this, I just can't. I cannot. So I know that's not my lane, and I like to stay in my lane.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Is that when you're doing things, when you're working for yourself and when you're running a business, you do have to understand that. And it goes back to, the finance and the legal game where for the finance part, you have to plan on that being a fund, if you will, a spot where you're going to put your specific donations into that bucket, saying, this is something I have to outsource because I don't get it. And I don't need to be taking the time to try to figure it out when I can have somebody.
Exactly.
You could do it with plenty of time and resources, but you don't need to be doing that because it's taking you away from what you're good at. So setting up those little, quote, buckets, or I used to do, actually, just because I'm a control freak when it comes to money, is for savings, I used to do the envelope trick where I literally would put an envelope I like to separate my money because I know what it's geared towards. And I feel like
I thought I was the only person who used to do that. Because when I tell people about that, they look at me like, are you crazy? I'm like, no, I know I want to go on vacation. So I had an envelope fund for the vacation. Yeah. I know that I'm going to want to splurge for the summer. I had a summer savings fund. So I put monies in, and I had my daughter do the same thing when I give her weekly allowances. So she had a fun, F-U-N, fun envelope. She had this is my college fund envelope, and then she had this is my bank account envelope.
I love it.
So yeah, she would have to take the allowance and she would have to split it into 3 and put what each piece would get. So it was like $20 a week, and so it went 10, 5, 5.
Yeah. And that's the key, though. Like, I feel like that has.
And when we go out, you have to spend your money on things that you want. You have to, it goes straight back to nonprofits, prioritizing and making sure that you have your financial planning done. And a lot of nonprofit organizations that I meet who need to be in the ER is because they have no planning. They have no strategic plan. They have no financial plan. They don't have products and services set up, because a lot of them think too that because you're a nonprofit, that everything that you offer to the public has to be free. Nothing could be furthest from the truth. Nothing. In order to maintain sustainability within your organization, you have to have services that people are paying you for. You have to have programs that people are paying you for. So if you're a nonprofit who is there to enrich the community, the kids in the community, and you're holding an after-school program, they need to pay for this after-school program.
Yeah.
And people will look at me like, what? Nonprofits? No, they shouldn't have to pay for anything. They're a nonprofit. No. So what should happen is, I'm like, no. I'm like, what should happen is that this organization has a sliding scale for payments.
Oh, there you
go. You're gonna charge according to the income bracket that the participants are in. So you should have forms that parents are filling out, talking about how much how many people are in the household, how much money does this household bring in, and documents need to follow those claims that you have. So if you're telling me you only make, say, $200 a week, then you need to bring me a check stub showing me that you only make $200 a week. And therefore, you may be able to get your child into this program for free, And another person who's probably making, say, $600 a week will pay probably half of the cost of the program. But if your parent is making $1,000 or $2,000 a week, you need to pay full price.
Yeah. No, and that's smart. And that's it's all about managing that money and understanding, because and this is my craziness with the bank system and stuff. I'm like, can I just fix this where, you have your checking account? Well, why would you want to have, let's say your $1,000 paycheck in your banking account and be looking at that all day like, I got $1,000 sitting in my account. What should I go do? And then realize that later you have $959 worth of bills. So really you didn't have that extra $100 you thought you did because you didn't pay attention to your bills. Those were totally random numbers.
But what kills me, though, is that they changed the banking system so much. So at one point in time, when I was working, I used to have my checks deposited into my savings, and then I would go into my savings and transfer the money for the bills into my checking account. So I always had money in my savings. That's what you're supposed to be doing with saving, right?
There you go, yep.
Now, how the banking system is set up, that's what I intended to do when I just opened a new savings account maybe about a year ago. I could only make 6 withdrawals from my savings account per month.
Wow.
If I make anything more than that, they report me to the federal government. And I'm like, wait, you're talking about my savings account, my money, and you're telling me I can only withdraw from my savings account 6 times per month?
Wow.
Yes, it's crazy.
That is nuts. Yeah, see, I have it set up so that mine's opposite, where I have everything going to the checking account, but what I do is I have automatic withdrawal, which I never thought I would do, but I have it set up where literally $50 just goes into a separate account that I don't even get to see. It's just gone. And I just know that it's a small number. And I tell people, save, do something automatic like that, whether it's $5, $10,
Yes.
it doesn't matter. Like people, I always get the pushback where it's like, well, $10, that's just nothing. I mean, they feel like they have to be at $50, $100, $200, $300. I'm like, it adds
No,
up.
$10 over time adds up to quite a bit of money.
Yeah. And you're not realizing it, you know? And so I'm all about separating your money. And if you got to go back to just envelopes and stuffing it under your bed or something, like whatever works for you, cool. But
I agree.
You're aware of your finances.
But the thing that kills me is when I have friends who would tell me I can't save, I don't have any disposable income.
Right.
And I'm like, I almost swear that I spoke to you last week, the week before that, and you were in the McDonald's line or you were at Starbucks.
Yep.
If you're at Starbucks, you're paying like $6.
Right.
That's $6 you did not have to spend.
Yeah.
Okay. If you went to McDonald's, you probably paid another $6 over there.
Yeah.
That's $12. There you go.
Oh, yeah. You know that if you're in the Starbucks line, you're not getting the tall, which is probably about $5 by itself. You're getting at least the grande or the venti, which most people get, which is crazy.
Yep. So that's why I tell people, so don't tell me you don't have disposable income. You have disposable income. We all have them somewhere. Oh, well, not all. Most people have disposable income somewhere. It's just that we have poor money management skills.
Exactly.
And I was very guilty of having poor budget management skills at one point in time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was making so much money. I was just spending it just as I was making it. I had savings. I've always had a savings. Always. But I could have had my savings could have been so much bigger had I not had a problem with shopping.
Right.
Yep. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I had a serious shopping addiction. And I remember when I was grown, I was like about 25. And, when you're younger, back in, in the late 90s, early to mid 90s, late 90s, credit cards were very easy to get. Oh, so I had credit cards, and I had tons of credit cards. And I had limits of like 10,000 and above, Yep. And like I said, I had a shopping problem. So I would rack up $10,000 worth of clothing on my shop, and I could do that in a day. Oh. With my eyes closed. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just like I was shopping just...
I couldn't even...
I know. I cringe now when I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I cringe now thinking about it. And I literally, I'm going back to work because, like I said, I was a teacher. So summer's ending. It's time to go back to work. I need a whole new wardrobe. Like, the clothes I had last year can't be worn. Really?
Yep.
So I would go out and I would, sit at the computer with another friend of mine, and I would shop $10,000 worth of clothes one time. Well, my bill came in, and my mom accidentally, because we share the same mailbox, accidentally opened my bill, and my mom was very thrifty. She was an entrepreneur too, so she's always had different businesses, and just she had it made when it came to money. She was very money conscious, and she'll go in and buy a car, write a check, and buy a brand new car. I don't have that kind of game. Yeah. So, entrepreneurship does run in our family. It really does. And she saw the bill and she was mortified. And she was like, you need to pay that off now. I'm like, I don't have the money to pay it off now. She was like, so she went through my finances and she was like, you could pay this off in 2 months.
Oh my
If you
God.
stop doing this, you stop doing that, you stop doing this, you stop doing that. And in 2 months, I literally paid off that $10,000.
And that's how it's supposed to work, right? Is you
But I
gotta
had to do that twice, Ed. I didn't learn my lesson the first time.
Well,
I did it
right.
again.
Of course.
I did it again.
It can take us
You
long
know? Yeah, I did it again. And she was like, she took my credit cards and she cut them up. She was like, you're not responsible. And I had my son at the time, so I was a mother too. But I owned my own house. I had a brand new car. I mean, like I said, I was doing well for myself.
Yeah.
But I could have been doing so much better had I not wanted to, I call it now keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes.
Like wanting to keep up with everyone else. I could have had so much more money than I do. So much more.
And that's
right.
It's like, I decided that a while back, all my friends used to say, Ed, you're such a cheap ass. And I would be like, well, I just like to watch where my money goes, and I know where I want to spend it. Like I'll be spending some money if it's something like a trip or something versus, Starbucks every day. And so finally determined that I am frugal with my money because I am careful of how I spend it and I watch where it goes.
Exactly.
And I feel guilty, literally. And I always find deals if I go shopping or whatever. I always find deals, which is great. But at the same time, I'm still.
But now I do. I do too.
I still feel guilty when I buy stuff because I'm like, well, did I really need that? I could have just left that. Like, no, I'm okay.
You know where I am with that a lot? And my friends, the few friends I do have that do go to the casino, they really don't like going to the casino with me because I would go to the casino with $5. And they're like, how are you going to gamble with $5? And I'm like, I'm not a gambler.
Right.
Because the one thing I can tell you is that I'm going to spend this $5 in the machine, or if I spend $5, I'm not going to fret over $5.
Right.
But if I'm spending $20, $30, $40, $50, I'm going to spend this money in the machine, and then I'm going to go home, and there's going to be a bill, or something is going to happen, and I have to now take care of that. And all I can think about is how stupid I was to go to the casino and put it in the slot machine and didn't win a darn thing.
Yes, and that is exactly a key point. That case in point, this happens every time, I swear. You get the money in and well, as an entrepreneur, most of the time you're feeling like, oh my gosh, am I going to make the rent this month? Am I going to pay the mortgage? Am I going to be able to afford X?
Oh my goodness. I know this. Oh, I'm so familiar with this.
All the time. And I'm constantly looking at my finances and I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, what are we doing? How close are we getting? And then when you get the money in, you're like, okay, cool. We made it. We're good. And then all of a sudden you're like, there's that bill. Came right back out. I had recently the dog had tore his ACL, his other ACL. So of course, that was right when I had just got a decent paycheck and there was another vet bill, $4,500.
That's how it happens. Oh. I swear that it's like as soon as you get some money in your hands, boop, it disappears.
Yeah, which is why it's so important to watch how you spend and to save. It's like save. Like I guess with our parents and older generations, it was like, no, all you do is save. And so some people are like, well, I don't want to save it, I want to spend it. And it's like there's a happy medium balance that you can do. You can spend
there really is,
and then have some savings as well. Like, be smart about it. Don't go one extreme to the other.
And for me, I'm the type of person, if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it. So when I say that, I mean, if I need a new computer, I'm not going to buy I don't know, a name of a cheap computer, whatever, a cheap computer. I'm going to wait and I'm going to sacrifice and save the money to buy what I really want. Something that's going to last me over a period of time where I can see a return on my investment. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to go buy something because it's cheap.
Exactly, and that's what I have.
Because I think that when you get cheap, you really get cheap. You know?
Well, and
you buy something cheap, and then breaks and then you have to buy it again. Like, that doesn't make sense to me either.
I went through, no offense if you have a PC or know people who have PCs, but
I have a PC.
Yeah.
But I've had my PC for the last 4 years.
And see, that's great, because see, when I had PCs back in the day, and I went through them like crazy, and I take care of my stuff, but I had gone through like 4 in a 2-year period or something like that. It was ridiculous. And, you know, I got them, they were cheap. It was like $400 or $500, good to go, because I didn't want to spend, you know, the $1,000 or $2,000 for a Mac. And ever since I switched, I've always had, I think I'm on my second Mac, and I could have kept the first one. It was just not keeping up in terms of what I needed it for, but it was still going great. And I tell people, it's an investment up front that lasts longer over time. So even if you go with a PC, like, figure out what's going to work for you, but just realize that don't go with the cheap model, because you're just throwing money
Exactly.
away.
And that's what I did. I knew exactly what I needed my PC to do. And I took the time and I did the research, and I bought this PC. And like I said, it's been 4 years. Have I had issues with it? Yeah, viruses, which I just take to the Mac store in the mall, and they clear it for me for free. But I have had friends who have recommended buying this particular HP too, who haven't bought it, went out and bought a cheaper version, and they bought 2 cents.
Yep.
You know, I said, granted, I paid $1,600 for the one I had, but 4 years, I can get rid of it today and feel okay about that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's the same thing too when it comes to, doing, like you said, doing your research is key, because I would have a lot of people come into, when I used to work at Apple, I used to have people come in and they would be so upset with the Chromebook that they bought. Now, if you're not familiar with a Chromebook is just...
I wouldn't buy a Chromebook.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't even buy that for my kid.
Right. They see that it's a laptop, but it's not a full functioning computer. It's literally just to use Google Chrome, basically. I mean, let's be honest. Like, it's literally just a portal to the web, which can be fine if that's what you need it for. But what people don't do enough of is their research. So they buy that for $300, whatever. And then they realize when them or the kid needs to download something or upload something that it's not capable of doing it, or it crashes, or whatever it may be. And so it's like that you didn't buy, just like a tablet, an iPad, whatever. It's not a full functioning computer. The line can blur in a lot of cases, but it's still not a full functioning computer. And you're having a modified version of what you would see on a computer. So you just really have to be aware of the technology.
Yes, you do.
So let me ask you, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody new in the entrepreneur world, or who is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? What's one piece of advice you would give them?
Do your research.
Love it.
Do your research. Figure out what's going on in the field that you want to enter. You need to create that client profile. Who is your ideal client? I have a whole, what they call it, like workbook on questions you should be asking yourself about who your ideal client is, what do they look like. You just need to really do your research and speak to someone who's already in that field.
Yes, that's a big one.
Speak to someone who's already doing the work that you want to do. I mean, yes, sometimes it's hard to find someone who's willing to share information with you. At least I found that when I started, when I decided to really go into being a nonprofit consultant. I really found that, you know, especially people on the internet. So I just kind of piggyback on the people who I worked for and ask them questions, you know. But yeah, finding a mentor or finding someone who's already working in that field that can give you some insight as to pitfalls that you may meet and how to, you know, overcome certain obstacles is so key to success. So absolutely key.
I agree. Well said. I love that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Dive deeper into the conversation with this guest as well as others by going to yes-to-entrepreneurship.com/podcast. Over there, you will find a list of all the previous episodes and bonus material for each guest. I hope that you'll continue to share out this podcast, and please be sure to leave a review in iTunes and subscribe so that way others can discover this show and be able to realize that they are not alone and that they have somebody they can count on to provide value and motivate and inspire them to keep moving forward. Together, we can make it happen. And like I always say, teamwork equals success. So go out there and do something great, because why not?